Welcome Primary 5, with you is Miss Noura Abdurrahman, and today we are going to start lesson number 3 on concept number 2 on unit 2. So are you ready? Let's go! We have different materials around us. Some materials can attract it to the magnet and some materials are not attracted to the magnet. What's the meaning of materials attracted? Attracted means they are become closer to the magnet. Okay, what is the materials which attracted to the magnet? Anything made of iron is attracted to the magnet. Okay, anything made of wood, glass, cartoon, paper, wood, all of that is not attracted to the magnet. So we have substance attracted to the magnet and substance not attracted to the magnet. Okay, we have also some substance can float on the surface of the water and some substance can sink on the bottom of the water. What's the meaning of floating and sinking? Floating means still on the top or on the surface of water. Anything still on the top or surface of water, it's called float. This is called float. And when the substance sink or go on the bottom of the water, this is called sink. This is called sink. So some substance can float and some substance can sink. Okay, floating and sinking depending on mass? No, it doesn't depend on mass. As you can see here in this picture, we have an apple and coin. The coin has a mass lighter than the apple, and the apple has more mass than the coin, but the apple is floating and the coin is sinking. So why? Because the floating and sinking don't depend on the mass. Floating or sinking doesn't depend on the mass, but it's depending on the type of materials. The materials which made of iron and glass can sink on the bottom of the water. Materials which made of iron and glass can sink in the bottom of the water. And the materials like the fruits, like the wood, like the plastic, like the cork can float on the surface of water. So some materials can float on the surface of water like plastic, fruits, cork, wood. Some materials can sink like iron and glass. Okay, now let's talk what can affect the mass. The shape can affect the mass or the size can affect the mass. Let's see together. At first, here we have a piece of aluminum foil. Let's measure its mass. Its mass is 2 grams. Okay, if I take this aluminum foil and I crush it with my hand, its shape will change, right? Now, if I put it on the scale again to measure its mass, we can find that it also have a 2 grams. So the shape is affecting the mass? No. So maybe the shape will change, but the mass doesn't change. So the shape doesn't affect the mass. The shape doesn't affect the mass. Okay, number 2, let's go to the size. If I have here a 1 apple and I measure the mass of 1 apple, maybe it's 10 grams. Okay, after measuring the mass of the apple, I cut it into a 2 halves. I measure each half separately, so each half has 5 grams. So this 5 grams is nearly equal the half of the mass of the original apple. So that means that the size or the volume can affect the mass. Size or volume can affect the mass. When the volume or the size decrease, the mass will decrease. When the volume or size increase, the mass will increase. So the volume can affect the material, but the shape doesn't affect the mass of the material. Now let's go to lesson 4. Now we are going to talk about a gas. This gas is called helium. It's called what? Helium. Repeat after me. Helium. Okay, we will know the 2 properties of helium, the physical properties and chemical properties, as we know that the properties of matter are classified into physical and chemical. What is the physical properties of the helium? Let's talk about the mass of helium. The helium is a very light gas. That means that it is lighter than the air. What's the meaning of that? Do you know the balloons which filled with helium? Well, the balloons are going up all the time. It's moving up. Why it is moving up? Because the helium is lighter than the air. So the air is heavier than the helium. So all the time, the heavy gas or the heavy thing is moving down. and the light gas or the light thing is moving up. So the air will move down and the helium will move up. Why? Because the helium is lighter than the air. So again, the helium is lighter than the air, and this is a physical property. Okay, number two, let's talk about the chemical properties of helium. The chemical properties of helium, that at first it is not poisonous if you put it in your mouth, or when you are use it. The helium is not poisonous, so it's a safe gas. It's not poisonous. Number two, it's not flammable material. That means that it is not interacting with fire. If I try to interact the helium with fire, it is not burning and not doesn't produce any fire or any flame. So it's not flammable material. Not flammable material. Flammable means doesn't burn. Flammable means that it doesn't burn. So it is not poisonous, not flammable. Not poisonous, not flammable. So it's a safe gas because it is not poisonous and not flammable. And these are chemical properties. So again, the helium has a physical and chemical properties. The physical properties is that it is a light gas which is lighter than the air, and from the chemical properties of helium, that it is not poisonous and not flammable. So what is the uses of helium? We can use the helium on filling the balloons, as we can see here, and filling the blimps. So filling the balloons and filling the blimps. This is the blimps. If you don't know what is the blimps, okay, give reason why we are filling the balloons and blimps with helium. Because the helium is lighter than the air. Excellent. Because the helium is lighter than the air, so it will move up. Excellent. And here we have the good reason. Now let's talk about copper. Do you know the copper? If we are cutting any wire in our home, we can see maybe like an orange thin wires. These called copper. It's called what? Copper. Today we are going to talk about the physical properties of copper. The copper, we are take it from under the ground as metal or as a rock. It doesn't have this shape. Okay, how can we make it like that? The copper can be stretched. We can melt it and stretch it into a thin flexible wires. So the copper can be stretched into wires. Again, the copper can be stretched into wires. So this is a physical property. The first physical property of copper, that it can be stretched into wires. It can be stretched into wires. Number two, the copper can conduct the electricity well. What's the meaning of conduct the electricity? We are using the copper in making wires. Why? Because it can conduct the electricity. Conduct electricity means that it can transfer the electricity. Like when we are putting the computer. The copper wire make what? Transfer electricity from the cable to the computer. So the copper can conduct electricity or transfer electricity. Yes. So conduct means transfer. Conduct means transfer. So why we are using the copper on the wires? Because it can conduct the electricity well. It can conduct electricity well. Number three, it also conducts the heat well. Sometimes we are making the cooking pans of copper. Why we are making coppers? Because the copper can conduct the heat. What's the meaning of conduct? Transfer the heat. It can transfer the heat to the food, so the food can be cooked. So, what is the physical properties of copper? The copper can be stretched into wires, conduct the electricity well, conduct the heat well. Again, can be stretched into wires, conduct the electricity well, conduct the heat well. Again, can be stretched into wires, conduct electricity well, conduct the heat well. What is the meaning of conduction? As I say, the Conduction means transferring heat or electricity. So conduction means the ability of the material to transfer heat and electricity. What is the meaning of conduction? The ability of material to transfer heat or electricity. Here I have the copper. If I put it in the fire, it will transfer the heat. So it is a good conductor of heat. Good conductor of heat. The copper also can transfer the electricity. So it is a good conductor of electricity. Good conductor of electricity. So the materials according to the conduction of heat and electricity are classified into good conductors and bad conductors. Good conductors and bad conductors. The good conductors, it is the material which can transfer the heat and electricity. It's called good conductors. The materials that transfer the electricity and heat, they are called good conductors. The materials which cannot transfer the heat or electricity, they are called bad conductors. Bad conductors like wood and plastic. Wood and plastic doesn't transfer the heat or electricity, so they are called bad conductors. So what is the conduction? The ability of material to transfer heat or electricity. Some materials are good conductors of heat and electricity. Some materials are bad conductors of heat and electricity. What is the uses of copper? As we said, we can use the copper on making electrical wires, as we can see, because the copper can be stretched and also it's good conductor of electricity. Number two, we can use it on making the cooking pans. So give reason why the electric wires are made of copper, because the copper is good conductor of electricity and can be stretched into wires. Okay, let's talk about the handles of cooking pots. The handles of cooking pots all the time it's made of wood and plastic. Why they are made of wood and plastic? Because the wood and plastic are bad conductors of heat. Yeah, what's the meaning of bad conductors of heat? They cannot transfer the heat, so they are bad conductors. So we can make the handles of cooking pans of wood and plastic. We can use the wood and plastic on making the handles of cooking pans. Why? Because they are bad conductors of heat. The last thing today, we have three materials: steel, glass, and rubber. The steel is hard and strong. The steel is hard and strong. So we can use it on making the screwdrivers. This is the screwdrivers. And we also can use it on making the hammers. So give reason why we are making the screwdrivers and hammers from steel, because it is hard and strong. Because the steel is hard and strong. Number two, the glass. The glass is transparent and smooth. The glass is transparent and smooth. So we can use the glass on making windows and eyeglasses. Windows and eyeglasses. Give reason why we can make the window and eyeglasses from glass, because the glass is transparent and smooth. Number three, we have the rubber. Okay, the rubber is waterproof. We know what's the meaning of waterproof, right? Number two, it's flexible. So the rubber is waterproof and flexible. Okay, so that's why we can use the rubber on making tires, gloves, and athletic shoes. Tires, gloves, and athletic shoes. So give reason why we are making the tires, gloves, and athletic shoes from rubber, because the rubber is waterproof and flexible. The rubber is waterproof and flexible. With you was Miss Noor Abdurrahman, and thank you for listening.